By the way, if we mentioned that we have to store the solar energy for that long lunar night, there is one other special energy storage solution we can talk about, and the lunar environment helps this solution. So that they are there are the Spinwheel solution, where you have a certain amount of mass in a cylinder format, and then you spin it to a really high speed. I think the spin wheels are working in the level of 10,000 RPM, something like that. So they are spinning fast, and for that on the in Earth we are using housing for these, because we evacuate that housing, so there should be the highest possible level of vacuum inside, so no friction should slow down the spinning wheel, the spin wheel inside that. And also we are using sometimes magnetic bearing for the axis to lower the friction also. So that way this spin wheel can store the energy for longer time with less loss, so decreased loss. And on the moon, what is special, we have vacuum everywhere on the surface, so we don't have to worry about the vacuum. It's already given. And also we have 1/6 of the gravity only. That means that when you make the magnetic bearing, the forces are going to be lower. So that means we can have perhaps good energy storing bigger spin wheels on the moon, only with the fence around it, so no one should go there and touch it, because of why not. But so
Yeah.
And the idea of this is obviously conservation of motion. So you're
Absolutely.
using kinetic energy to spin up the wheel, and then that kinetic energy through conservation of motion keeps going, and then whenever you need that energy back in the grid, you can then siphon off some of the kinetic energy and turn it into electrical energy.
Absolutely. This is a proven technology here on Earth, so they are using that for power grids, also to equalize the power, the voltage level. So if there is too much power in and not enough consumer, then they are storing the energy into these, and on the opposite also. So that is also an interesting possibility on the moon, this energy storage.
Yeah, and as you said, with 1/6 gravity, you can make them much bigger than you can on Earth. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think on Earth, that's not going to be something to the moon, but on Earth, they sometimes use water as like a battery. So you can have a dam and a couple of lakes of water, and you can just use it as a battery.
yeah, so that I can actually tell you all about that, because where I'm from, we actually have a hydroelectric dam. And there's one, it's called the Electric Mountain in North Wales. And effectively, you have a lake at the top of the mountain and a lake at the bottom of the mountain. And then they have a place where they let the water through, and it travels through a almost downward large water shaft, and then hits turbines and spins the turbines up, and then the water goes, and then they can pump that excess water back up the mountain to the other lake. So, and they've actually had done a really good job as well of doing this without disturbing any of the local wildlife, which is really good.
Yeah, that's great, because I think renewable energy is the way to go. So if we can manage to do that on the moon as well, that would be nice. And the rovers are good example for that. So yeah, with the radioactive battery, you can use a rover for quite a long time, for example Perseverance. But if you manage to solve that the solar panels can always produce electricity, it can even work even for longer term.
So did we have any other launch concepts?
Yes, of course. There are some interesting concepts for launching something, and the main the point of these concepts are always we should use something from the lunar surface, energy or infrastructure, which make the launch easier, in the sense that we don't have to have or produce as much fuel as otherwise. So the other concept is quite interesting, and it could work for non-human payloads, so for materials, fuels, and that's called SpinLaunch. And this concept is now being developed here on Earth in the US. There is a SpinLaunch company which is doing that. And the concept is quite simple. You have a rotating structure. It can be only two radius, two actually, yeah.
Horizontally,
so something like
vertically.
Yeah, and then you spin it up to really high tangential speeds, and then when it is going fast enough, then you just release it, and then your payload, your spacecraft, your rocket has an initial speed which can be really high. And here on Earth, the biggest problem is the atmosphere itself, because when you are going with a high speed, with a high velocity, the air friction is getting really, really high. So it is not linear, not even on the second power. So I think it goes to the fourth power, something like that. The air friction, the force which is generated against the moving body in the air. And for that, to solve that, the here on Earth, the SpinLaunch company plans to build a disc-like building which is evacuated. So which they are creating vacuum in that building, and in that building they are spinning up the payload. And when it's in the right speed, there is a small tube that can where this small rocket, actually it's a small rocket, can exist that. But on the moon, we again have the luck not to have an atmosphere at all. So it on the moon, it would be like build a high tower or high enough tower, which is put a wheel on it, and then you put your payload on that and the counterweight on the other side, or another payload, and then you will have a twin launch in a just the opposite direction, and you just spin it up, and you spin it up with using local energy. on the moon. You don't have to put that into your rocket in a form of fuel. And then when you reach the proper velocity, which can be 1.6 kilometer per second, you just release the two payloads, and they are leaving your SpinLaunch complex in opposite directions. And that's a quite nice concept. But if you do the math and calculate what should be the acceleration forces for a certain diameter structure, you realize that it is not for humans. So for to make it good enough for humans, you have to have, I think, 40 kilometers in radius or in diameter. It doesn't really matter, because 40 kilometer big structure that you are going to spin up, no, not so possible. And also not it's not so needed, because you can use this mag-rail concept, which can be actually better. Yeah, that is an interesting concept, by the way. So.
Yeah, I'm just imagining it now. Like when you were describing it, I was just imagining it. I was just like, yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if the SpinLaunch company, which actually exists, and they are developing this kind of launch system on Earth, and they are aiming to use it for small payloads. And the big advantage would be that what they are aiming for is they can launch quite frequently. So for example, they can launch every half an hour or something like that. And of course, small payloads, these could be small payloads. Of course, the payload has to withstand the high acceleration force, and that. But we know such machines as well, and electronics as well, because they are building electronics in gun bullets, actually. What is not so big guns, into big guns bullets, and they are having electric circuits in it to guide and to know when to explode, actually. Yeah. And referring back to the electric pumped generator, this having the high reserve and the low lake, and you just pump up. So on the moon, it's even worse than on Earth. So on Earth already you have to use a lot of water, cubic kilometers of water, to and you have to try to find the highest place where you can put the upper reserve, and so to have the biggest height difference, because gravity is not so dense in the sense of energy. So, and on the moon it's even worse. So on the moon it is not it's not a option. It's not a real option to move something up to a lunar mountain, or to move something up to a really high lunar tower which we build, because the stored energy would be not so much, not enough. So that's yeah.
I remember you had a great idea how to get buildings under the regolith.
Oh yeah. That's the regolith is a regolith, and the moon dust is a bit. Sometimes it's shown as a big problem because of it is going everywhere. It is even going under the astronaut's suit, and it can go into the machines it can cause some problems there. But as we know, the surface of the moon in some regions are covered with several meters of lunar dust and regolith, and these are little stones or even in the form of dust. And what we know in Earth, that if we just have a big amount of sand, and if we make some if we lead some gas into this one and make it distribute it evenly and push the gas into it, there is going to be small gas bubbles, let's say, in the dust in this sand structure, which is going to change the physical behavior of the sand. So it is starting to act like liquid. There are some nice demonstration videos about it.
A good example about this is a video by Mark Rober, where he makes a swimming pool out of sand.
Yeah, yeah, that's nice. And so on the moon we have this lot of several meters of regolith and moon dust. And what if we put a tube into it and somehow distribute in a certain surface under it, let's say 3, 5, or 7 meters deep, something like that, and push the gas, some kind of gas, which we can find, of course, on the moon, because we want to use everything from the moon. And I think the most common gas, but what we could get on the moon is oxygen, I think, right?
Yep. I think the regolith is around 40% oxygen.
Yeah, absolutely. So we push the gas into it, and perhaps we can move it a bit with vibration or that kind of mechanical
impact hammers.
Yeah, exactly. That one. And then it starts to act like liquid, which is a bad thing if there is an astronaut standing on that, because it can sink into it. But if we are prepared for that, and we are doing that just for that purpose, then we can place a habitat module on the surface of that moon dust region. And then apply this method, and the lunar dust will act like water, and then we can sink actually into this our habitat module, and we sink it until it is going to be covered by the regolith and lunar dust. And of course it should have a tower that goes to the surface, so the habitants can go out and in and out from there through that tube. But that way, perhaps it is easier to put it down, comparing to excavating that much material and put it on the top of that. And why it is good? It is good because of mainly three different purposes. One is thermal protection. So if it's in the regolith, in there, it is not going to feel the really high temperature differences between the lunar day and lunar night, which are how many? 200 Kelvin.
I'm not
the
sure about
difference.
the exact numbers, but let's say from around -100 100 minus Celsius to about 100 Celsius.
Yeah. So it's 200 is the difference between that. So it's not going to feed that. This is only one thing. The other very important thing is radiation protection. We were already talking about. So it is going to reduce the amount of radiation in the habitat. And the third is what we also mentioned, this meteorite protection. So if it's under the surface, it is not going to have any problem if a small meteorite hit the surface, because the regolith will act like a shield in this case. So that is the idea. And I also thought about perhaps another method where we can somehow put an inflatable module under the regolith, perhaps this way also, so making it easier to put it down in some whatever meter deep, and make the similar method to liquefy the surface, and then we just inflate the module down there, and it is going to be covered with regolith as well. Yeah, that's
I mean, if the technology, well, we know that you can do this same effect with sand on Earth, but if you can just get some impact hammers and sink entire buildings into the moon, that would probably reduce the construction cost by quite a bit, I would think.
But this impact hammers you mentioned, it is quite interesting because on the Earth, the grain of sand, they are rounded because of we have the air, we have the wind, and they are moving, and they get rounded, and even more in the waters, of course. But the lunar dust particles, they are really sharp and irregular form, so they can connect to each other perhaps better. So it can be a problem. So they will act in a different way, probably.
Yeah, may need some testing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, now that we're really aiming to get back on the moon, now's the time to be doing this kind of testing, this materials research with what we've got there. What can we use it for,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, within a few years, I think we could get like a couple of tons of lunar regolith back to Earth and do more tests on it.
Yeah. With the help of, for example, the Starship, perhaps we can have some material back. Yeah.
Thanks for listening. It's been an interesting talk with Szabolcs Jaray, and I've been Mikko, the host of Deep Dive Fridays, and joining me today have been...
I've been Rich LB, co-host of Becoming Multiplanetary.
I am Szabolcs from What About It? Shortly.
Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.